My name is Glenda. I'm 59, and during 2 years of mourning, I let others guide my routine. Lyra started tidying the house, taking photos, labeling boxes, saying it was to make my life easier. Next thing I knew, my memories of my husband were in unmarked bags. She said I mixed up dates, forgot names, and that it was normal at this age. Darren, my son, wouldn't look me in the eye when I asked if it was okay. I said I needed time, and she replied, "Time is what you don't have." Conversation turned to money, passwords, credit cards, control. It was in this atmosphere that she scheduled the meeting with the lawyer. I woke up early on the day of the meeting, but I deliberately took my time. I washed my husband's coffee cup, even though I hadn't used it, just to feel like it was still my kitchen. Lyra hurried in, checking my phone, asking if I'd taken my medication. She said the agenda was simple: sell the house, pay off debts, and secure a safe place for me. She calls nursing home residential care, like a resort. Darren just said, "Mom, it's for your own good." And I felt the ground slip again. We got in their car, me in the back seat, like a child. I kept counting the corners so I wouldn't think too much. On the way, Lyra reviewed a paper with highlighted topics and amounts. She talked about the mortgage, overdue bills, and unfinished renovations. I knew I hadn't signed any mortgages since my husband left. When I asked where the copies were, she said everything was digital and the lawyer would show it. I felt ashamed to doubt it, as if I were ungrateful for asking. Darren squeezed my hand quickly, as if asking for silence. I took a deep breath and promised myself I wouldn't sign anything without reading it. That was the agreement I made with myself during the drive. The office was bright and unpretentious, and the lawyer greeted us without ceremony. He listened to Lyra's speech first, his pen aligned with the edge of his notebook. She said I was confused and that the family had already reached a consensus on the sale. "For Glenda's sake," she repeated, looking at me like a schoolteacher. Darren nodded, adding nothing. I asked if there was any alternative that wouldn't have to leave the house. Lyra laughed briefly and said, "I didn't understand the seriousness." That's when the lawyer opened a drawer and took out a manila envelope. He said the envelope had been in the file since my husband's death. He explained that there were instructions to open it if a forced sale proposal ever arose. He asked for my ID, checked my signature, and turned on the living room television. My chest heaved when I saw my husband's face on the video. He gave my name, my birthday, and explained that he had left a plan. He said it was a revocable trust with protective triggers for me. He mentioned loss of inheritance in the event of coercion or mistreatment, and that everything was validated with journals, statements, and attachments in the office itself. His image was clear, and his voice was calm, direct, and straightforward. He said that grief messes with your head and that well-intentioned people can cross the line. He repeated twice, "Glenda decides where she lives, who she talks to, and how she spends her own money." He informed me that if anyone pushed me to sell the house against my will, the clause would activate, and that the lawyer had the power to act immediately if he perceived undue pressure. Lyra crossed her arms, and I heard her irritated sigh. Darren lowered his head and fiddled with his phone as if he wanted to disappear. I remained seated, but internally, I stood up. The lawyer paused the video and opened a blue folder with tabs. He showed an index, my husband's diaries, a home maintenance spreadsheet, receipts, and receipts. He explained that the debts Lyra mentioned had already been provisioned for in a fund he had created, that the so-called mortgage didn't exist. It was a maintenance in the contract, that any sale due to incapacity would require reports, and there had been no request from me. He used the word coercion firmly, looking at the three of them. Then he calmly stated that the clause was now formally activated, and that from that moment on, I was taking back everything. Lyra tried to dismiss the video, saying it was emotional and not legal. The lawyer responded with the registration number and the witness list. She asked about acquired rights, and he mentioned loss of inheritance due to abuse. Darren quietly asked if it was still possible to talk as a family. I took a deep breath and said, "Yes, talk, no pushing." I asked for a copy of everything and a calendar of next steps. The lawyer handed me a sheet with practical instructions. He asked me to come early the next day without my entourage. I returned home with a mixture of relief and pent-up anger. I made my bed as usual, folded my pajamas, sat on the couch, and wrote 3 pages. I wrote what I wanted to remember, what I didn't want to forget, and what I wouldn't accept anymore. I set aside documents, vaccination card, spare key, and proof of address. I turned off the Wi-Fi and slept with my phone on airplane mode. I woke up before sunrise, drank black coffee, and put on lipstick, which I had stopped using. I grabbed a new notebook and went to the office alone. It was my first full decision in a long time. The lawyer greeted me with an organized desk and a to-do list. Change bank, card, and email passwords with step-by-step instructions already printed. Request complete statements for the last 24 months and block suspicious automatic PIX payments. Inventory household items with photos, dates, and approximate values. Check the maintenance fund my husband created and confirm ownership. Request the administrator's spreadsheet of contributions and actual expenses. He called the manager on speakerphone and I confirmed my identity. When I heard that I was the sole controller of that fund, I felt my body return to its original position. I spent the afternoon searching for receipts and papers that Lyra said no longer existed. I found a black folder in the trunk with my husband's handwriting on the spine. Inside were receipts for large purchases she called urgent expenses. Many were duplicated on her card with different amounts. I photographed everything, noted each difference, and sent it to the lawyer in a single email. That evening, he responded with a draft notice to vacate. It also contained a spreadsheet of retroactive rent for the guest room occupancy and a field reserved for reimbursement for unauthorized renovations. Before bed, I wrote a short letter to Darren. I told him I loved him, but that love without respect becomes a license for abuse. I explained that the house was my decision and that I wouldn't go to a nursing home. I invited him to talk to me without Lyra on a set day and time. I asked him to read the documents before responding. I told him I was fine, being cared for and aware of what I was doing. I made it clear that the door to my affection wasn't closed, but now had a lock. I folded the letter, put it in the envelope, and slept with the light off by choice. I sent the notice to vacate via the lawyer's official email and also through a notary public. The document included dates, deadlines, and a list of amounts to be assessed. Retroactive rent for the use of my husband's guest room and office. Reimbursement for renovations carried out without my authorization and inflated on the spreadsheet. Return of appliances purchased with my card and paid for in the trust. Cancellation of any direct debits in my name that benefited both of us, all based on the trust clauses and the attachments to the video will. I digitally signed it and requested a read receipt. It was the first time I had put my name forward without asking permission. That afternoon, the lawyer handed me the master spreadsheet with the tabs already adjusted. One tab was for retroactive rent with monthly amounts and the correction index, another for questionable expenses with the invoice, date, who paid, and where the refund was filed, a third for physical items, refrigerator, television, tools, even new curtains. I filled it out line by line. My arm hurt, but it cleared my head. In the end, everything was numbered, and numbers don't tolerate gaslighting. I sent the first version for review and saved a copy on a flash drive. For the first time in a long time, I knew how much I owed and how much I was owed. It wasn't a guess, it was a calculation. I scheduled the meeting with Darren at the bakery near the lawyer's office. I arrived early, ordered coffee, and sat facing the door. He came in without Lyra, which gave me a better chance of breathing. I said first, "Today is a conversation, not an ambush." I handed him a copy of your father's video and the trust summary. I explained the deadlines, the reasons, and what coercion means in practice. I said I wouldn't yell, but that the decisions were now mine and my lawyer's. He said he was lost and afraid of a fight. I replied that I was too, but fear doesn't make decisions for me. Darren tried to defend the idea of selling just a piece of land. I asked who had said that, and he looked away. I explained that at the moment a sale wasn't on the agenda, that the first step was to clear the property and determine the values. I showed him the mortgage tab, which never existed as a debt. It was the maintenance fund his father created and I controlled. He saw the statement with my name on it and was quiet for a moment. He said, "I didn't know." I replied, "Neither did I until yesterday. And look how it changes." That same day, I forwarded screenshots of Lyra's messages to the lawyer. She referred to me as confused and incapable of managing the house. I requested that all communication with her be emailed. No audio, no messages from Darren. Everything was recorded. I changed the electronic gate password and disabled remote access on her cell phone. I gave written notice with a receipt that the keys would be collected within the notice period. There was no legal surprise, just annoyance. Inconvenience doesn't break the contract. I followed through. The next day, I took inventory of what would remain and what was theirs. I used a colored label, a photo, and a brief description. What was mine and my husband's was labeled G. What was theirs was labeled LD. I put everything in the digital file with the date and time. For each expensive item, I attached the corresponding receipt or statement. If a receipt was missing, I marked no proof and opened a pending item. Transparency isn't polite, it's necessary. I wanted to sleep peacefully, and peace also comes from spreadsheets. Lyra responded to the lawyer's email calling the notification reverse abuse. She said she was taking care of me and that I was not emotionally capable. The lawyer attached the video of my husband and listed the behaviors considered coercion. He proposed a simple agreement: departure within 72 hours, key arrangement, and a repayment schedule. If they refused, we would proceed to court with a request for emergency relief. I read it all silently and simply wrote, "In agreement with my lawyer." The time for emotional justification for each step was over. I wasn't at war. I was executing a right. A right had devised and which I needed to honor. On the morning of the deadline, I called a furniture storage service to move their belongings. I left boxes, tape, a marker, and bubble wrap in the hallway. I placed the security deposit receipt on the table for any damage during transit. I asked them to catalog what they took so as not to cause a dispute later. A young employee told me, "You're very organized." I replied, "I learned yesterday, I'm practicing today." When Lyra arrived, she found the house labeled and the schedule printed. She laughed humorlessly and called it theater. I said, "Theater doesn't have receipts, here we do." Darren showed up half an hour later, tense but willing to help. He started gathering their things from my husband's office. Lyra fussed over the tags and wanted to peel some off. I pointed to the camera we'd installed the day before with a disclaimer on the door. She grimaced but stopped. Darren asked for a moment alone and asked if it was still possible to go back. I told him it could be fixed later, not undone. You guys leave today and then we'll talk about the rest, I said. He nodded wearily. In the afternoon, we reviewed the list of items and photos of what was left. We signed the terms of delivery for the guest room and office keys. The lawyer, via video conference, recorded the time and condition of the property. We read the water meter and electricity to clear up any doubts. Lyra wanted to take the living room TV, so I showed her the receipt in my name. Result, she kept it. She took her coffee maker and 3 boxes of utensils. The agreement became signed paper. Signed paper becomes peace of mind. At the end of the day, I sat on the floor of the empty room and breathed. It wasn't joy, it was a different kind of rest. I sent the updated inventory and photos to the lawyer. He returned it with the first draft of the retroactive rent calculation. It included interest, a correction index, and a start date. I read it slowly, highlighted points, and understood. It wasn't revenge, it was settlement. Settlement takes work, but it restores balance. I was getting back on track. 2 days later, I received a string of messages from family. Some said I'd been too harsh. Others suggested resentment over widowhood. I took a deep breath and responded to them all with the same phrase. I'm fine, receiving care and following legal advice. If anyone wanted to know more, I sent them to speak to the lawyer. The WhatsApp call was over. Those who love me, visit me. The house was open to affection, closed to abuse. The following week, I reviewed the charge for fraudulent expenses with my lawyer. He called it a disallowance, and what wasn't proven was dropped and what was. We opened the way for objections with deadlines and documents. If they proved it, it was withdrawn. If not, the charge continued. This approach gave me peace of mind because it was fair and clear. I didn't need to win everything. I needed to win the essentials. The essential was my right to make decisions and be respected. The rest was noise, and I was learning to lower the volume of the noise. On the day of the hearing, I arrived early with my lawyer and a briefcase filled with just the basics: documents, my doctor's report, extracts, the video on a flash drive, and the printed spreadsheet. Nothing excessive, just what answered the right questions. I took a deep breath in the hallway and repeated to myself, I don't need to convince, I need to present. Lyra arrived with another lawyer and a stack of nice paper. Darren came in silently, his gaze downcast, hands in his pockets. When our name was called, my legs trembled a little, but I walked. I walked in, sat down, and spoke only when asked. The judge first asked the lawyer to explain the trust. He summarized the protective clauses, the triggers, and the loss of inheritance due to coercion. Then he showed the video, short and direct, of my husband addressing me by name and date. Lyra tried to interrupt, but the judge asked for silence and wrote down the registration number. We presented the recent doctor's report confirming my capacity. I showed my signature on password changes and the inventory of the last few days. Everything was simple, dated, and with a receipt. The judge thanked me for my directness. When Lyra was given the opportunity to speak, she insisted that I was emotionally fragile. The judge asked if there was a report that said that. There wasn't. She asked about debts. We mentioned the maintenance fund and the statements. Lyra mentioned mortgage. The lawyer showed that it was a provision recorded in the contract. Darren said he wanted only the best for me. The judge asked if I wanted to sell. I said, looking at her, I don't want to. She wrote down, expressed will of the owner, and closed the pen. I felt the room grow larger. A preliminary injunction was issued to maintain possession, suspend any attempted sale, and formalize their departure. The deadline was short, with a fine for non-compliance, and an official would be provided if needed. It was also noted that compensation negotiations would continue on a spreadsheet with deadlines. the judge recommended communication only by email and no contact without an appointment. We signed, received a copy, and I thanked her, looking her in the eye. In the hallway, I pulled over for a minute and let out a breath. It wasn't a triumph. It was a technical relief. Relief is a victory. Back home, I reviewed version 2 of the spreadsheet with my lawyer. We opened a column for dispute received and another for proof accepted. For retroactive rent, we used the market value per meter and period occupied. For renovations, we kept only what had a note and authorization. The rest became charges. Appliances on my card remained on the return or payment list. We created a 12 installment schedule with fixed dates and clear interest rates. I sent everything in PDF without an opinion, just facts. Facts don't scream, they remain. Lyra tried to deflect from social media, telling her version of events. I didn't play along. I forwarded the link to my lawyer and closed the app. He sent a notification asking for a public retraction or proof. In the absence of proof, silence. I deleted unanswered malicious comments and blocked those who persisted. I spoke to 2 friends and asked, "When you see an attack, don't tag me. I don't need to know everything to protect myself." The house appreciated the silence. I spent an entire Saturday cleaning my husband's office. I dusted the shelves, put the books back, and put away what I no longer needed. I found a notebook with years-old home maintenance notes. There were deadlines for painting, roof maintenance, and water filter replacement. The routine he planned became my self-care routine. I taped a calendar to the closet door and set reminders on my phone. I was no longer going to live putting out fires. I was going to keep the house alive. I organized my finances into 3 simple accounts: home, care, and future. In home, I put my fixed bills and maintenance fund. In care, I put medicine, appointments, and a little extra for unexpected expenses. In future, I put an automatic amount every month, no matter how small. I got an extra card in my name for any place I don't use. I installed 2-factor authentication and wrote down my passwords in a physical safe. No loose papers or "I'll look at it later." My later started now. I started driving again early in the morning to overcome my fear of the city. I drove around the block twice, then drove to the market and parked. I bought myself some simple flowers and fresh bread. I greeted the cashier who recognized me from years ago. On the way back, I stopped at the square and sat on the bench in the sun. I existed there without asking anyone's permission. I called the neighborhood association and offered to help with the bazaar. Returning is doing small things in the present. A week later, the first installment arrived in my account. I didn't celebrate. I just marked received on the spreadsheet and took a deep breath. I sent the receipt, updated the balance, and moved on. With that money, I paid for the overdue electrical repair. I also bought new frames for the photos I'd saved. I hung an entire wall of memories, from our beginnings to today. It wasn't an altar, it was history, and I'm part of it. Darren wrote to me, asking for another conversation, alone. I responded with 3 conditions: a neutral place, a set time, and a prior reading of the documents. He agreed, and we met at a small cafe near the square. He arrived first and brought a copy with notes. He looked at me without flinching when I asked, "Why did you let me?" He said he thought I was just making it easier, and that he was afraid of going against his wife. I listened without interrupting. Then I told him my fear, losing my son and losing myself along with him. I told him the same thing I wrote in the letter. Love without respect isn't love. I explained that kinship isn't a safe passage for abuse. I'd welcome a rapprochement, but with clear boundaries. No discussion about my home without my lawyer. No decisions made on my behalf. If he wanted to give his opinion, he should study it and bring a proposal. I invited him to family therapy if he wanted to rebuild with me. He agreed and said he was separating from Lyra. I told him that forgiveness doesn't cancel consequences, but it opens the door for change. At home, I updated my notebook with a heading, Normal Life. I wrote down 3 things a day that brought me back to my senses: walking, cooking, calling a friend. I resumed my Saturday morning painting classes, even at beginner level. I donated clothes I didn't use and tidied up my sewing area. I signed up for a short finance course for mature women. The receptionist said, "It's never too late." I replied, "It's early today." I closed the notebook and went to water the plants in the backyard. The house smelled clean and coffee scented. When the email confirming the approved agreement arrived, I sat on the porch. The schedule became official, and so did the fines. I made some tea, turned on some soft music, and let the breeze in. I picked up my husband's mug, which I'd put away for fear of missing. I sipped slowly, staring at the wall that needs whitewashing later this month. Now I deal with what exists, not what they say exists. I choose the noise I let in, and my silence finally is mine. I started with the corners I'd left for last because they always hurt the most. I replaced the locks, inspected the gate, and requested a quote for the roof before the rains. I cleaned the water tank and called the electrician to check the circuit board. I created a maintenance folder with notes, deadlines, and reliable contacts. No favors without a receipt, only contracted services with a beginning, middle, and end. I paid what was due and saved the receipts in the cloud and in the safe. The house became pleasantly quiet, with no voices bossing me around. Silence also means organization. I learned that step by step. At the bank, I requested a preventive credit freeze and a subscription audit. The manager pulled up reports and discovered services I'd never contracted. We filed a dispute, and the first refund was received 2 days later. I canceled my old card and got one with a lower limit by my own choice. I set up spending alerts on my phone and checked my statements weekly. I arranged a check-in with the lawyer every 2 weeks just to adjust course. Small adjustments prevent big problems, he said, and I agreed. I was in control of the basics, and that changes everything. I invited 2 friends over for lunch, a simple affair. Rice, chicken, salad, and that pudding I always get right. Before eating, I explained the new rules of my life. No talking for myself, no deciding for myself. No, it's for your own good. If you want to help me, ask how, not when. They laughed, saying I was sharp, in a good way. I replied that I was just on point, and that point is health. We ate, washed the dishes together, and the house felt alive. At the association's bazaar, I took the unlabeled donation table. I sorted them by category, took photos, and created a simple notebook to track them. In the end, the collection was higher than in the previous 3 months. The coordinator thanked and asked if I would return the following week. I said yes, but within my schedule, because now I have a routine. Returning to serving gave me a determination I didn't even remember I had. It wasn't heroism, it was presence. I was present again. In therapy with Darren, I agreed to speak bluntly. I shared what it's like to see your own child silent while you're pushed out of life. He said it hurts more than any bill to pay. The therapist took notes and asked him to talk about fear and loyalty. He admitted he hid behind the will of others to avoid conflict. I asked for action instead of apologies, one thing at a time. He committed to studying the agreement and updating me on his progress. We set up weekly meetings for 3 months with an agenda and an end time. I wrote for him on a piece of paper. Trust is a deposit, not a gift. Each gesture is a small deposit, which over time becomes a balance. If you stop depositing, the balance drops. It's that simple. He understood better the spreadsheet than with a speech. So together we made a list of practical and possible gestures. Call before showing up, read documents before giving an opinion. Don't outsource the conversation. I said I didn't promise to forgive everything, but I did promise to look at the real effort. He left feeling lighter, I left feeling less suspicious. Lyra was late with the second installment and gave a lengthy justification. The lawyer responded with a contract penalty and a new, tight deadline. No humiliation, no drama, just a device and a date. 2 days later, the payment arrived with the penalty added. I marked received late and moved on. I learned that firmness without shouting resolves more than debate. I respond like an adult and leave the rest to those with technical expertise. My role is to live my life, not to educate those who don't want to learn. I ran into Lyra at the grocery store by chance in the cereal aisle. She tried to make a comment about ingratitude and family. I said anything, email my lawyer, and kept walking. I didn't speed up, I didn't stop to argue, I didn't make a fuss. My whole body understood I didn't need to prove anything there. I bought what I needed and walked home listening to music. I put the groceries away and wrote down the expenses in my notebook. Routine is an antidote to other people's drama. I chose some mementos of my husband to recirculate around the house, the wall clock he loved, the mug from the workshop, 2 photos of us. The rest was carefully stored without becoming a museum. I made a reading nook with the lamp he fixed last summer. I sat there in the afternoon and read 3 chapters without looking at my phone. I cried a little, but it was a simple cry without guilt or apology. He protected me with the legal plan. I honor him by living well. This sustains me without holding me back. In painting class, I accepted that my hand trembles in the first few lines. The teacher said that trembling isn't a mistake, it's a beginning. I painted a vase with flowers from my balcony, colors I see every day. I took it to the community center and hung it in the hallway, along with the others. A woman complimented my color choice and asked for tips. I laughed because I never thought anyone would ask me for painting tips. Being an apprentice again did me good. Learning is proof that life moves on. After 3 months, almost half of the agreement was paid. The spreadsheet showed the track and the track showed the destination. The installments were being paid, the interest was being adjusted, the fine was teaching punctuality. The lawyer said that if we kept up the pace, we'd close without any hiccups. I replied that pace is what I want most, no peaks and valleys. I used part of the proceeds to paint the wall and replace the sink faucet. Small things that changed the entire day. I paid attention to what I saw. Darren rented a small apartment near work. He sent the lease and the moving receipt without me asking. He said he'd started individual therapy in addition to ours. He asked if he could come over on Saturday to help with the garden. I said yes from 9 to noon with a list of chores. He arrived on time, mowed the lawn, changed the hose, and took out the trash. We had coffee on the porch and spoke briefly but pleasantly. When he left, I felt the bridge still exists, even if short. With life moving on, I went back to the doctor for my annual checkup. My blood pressure was good, my tests were up to date, my vitamin D was low, and I needed to get more sunlight. I wrote it down in my diary. A light walk 3 times a week in the morning. I stopped at the pharmacy, bought what I needed, and organized it in the little box. No heroics, just continuous care, which keeps things stable. I sent the results to my lawyer as a routine proof of capacity. It's not for others, it's for my own records. My records are my memory, independent of others. I went to the notary's office with lawyer and requested an updated certificate of registration for the house. I wanted to see for myself if there were any liens, promises of sale, or mortgages. It came out clean, as he'd already told me, But seeing the stamp gave me confidence. I also got a certificate of no municipal debts and the most recent paid property tax, IPTU. I kept everything in the property folder with the index on the first page. Now, if anyone asks anything about the house, I have a document, and a document cuts through awkward conversations. I returned home feeling like I owned it, in the simplest sense of the word. I created my statement Sunday. Every week, same time, same desk, I print, check, cross out what I don't recognize, and mark with post-it notes what needs action. Automatic picks goes first to home, then care, then future. If there's any left, great. If there isn't, it's not my fault, there's an adjustment. The passwords are kept in a physical safe with 2 witnesses listed. At the I close the folder and put the check mark on the calendar. Routine isn't a prison, it's a path, and the path takes me where I choose. The 3rd installment arrived on time with a clear receipt. I updated the spreadsheet, added up the interest, and marked payable this month. The denials remain the same. Without proof, the collection continues. With proof, it's removed. 2 invoices appeared and disappeared from the list without drama. The outstanding balance became more realistic, smaller, and attainable. I sent the consolidated statement to the lawyer and filed the month's version. No rhetoric, just numbers. Numbers hold the head when emotions try to trip you up. I received an email from Lyra's lawyer proposing a discount for early settlement. I asked for the terms. He wanted a discount in exchange for a broad silence clause. I responded through my lawyer. I can discuss terms and conditions, but I won't negotiate the truth. The proposal came back without the clause, with a slight interest adjustment. I analyzed it calmly, pencil in hand, and chose to maintain the original agreement. It wasn't out of spite, it was out of consistency with what I'd agreed to back then. When the foundation is good, you don't change things out of anxiety, and I'm not going to rush to finish quickly and make a mistake. The community center coordinator asked me to speak at a women's meeting. I brought my notebook and a simple checklist, documents, passwords, accounts, and limits. I spoke of my husband's trust as a gesture of care, not as a weapon. I explained coercion as I understood it in practice. No one left with a lawyer. Everyone left with a task. In the end, 3 women hugged me and asked for the printed checklist. I emailed it, without my photo, without exposure. Helping is also done discreetly. In therapy with Darren, I discussed the house keys. I explained that I wouldn't keep a copy with him for now, for the sake of our relationship. If you want help with something around the house, you need a quote and receipt, like any other service provider. He agreed without a frown, wrote down the rules, and asked to install a handrail. I approved with a written quote and an appointment with him at home. He showed up on time, brought the installer, and stayed until it was finished. In the end, it looked good and safe, and I signed the agreement. That's how trust is restored: procedure and respect. Some relatives insisted on peacemaking through the family group. I responded that my peace isn't up for public debate. I reinforced legal matters, email, emotional matters, coffee by appointment. I blocked anyone who mistook opinion for permission to invade. There's no expulsion, there's a limit. Those who understood stayed, those who didn't left. The remaining solitude is silent and good. There's room for air inside the head. I installed a new peephole, a presence sensor in the yard, and a timer on the outdoor lights. It's not practical autonomy to arrive and leave safely. I checked the latches, lubricated the hinges, and labeled the electrical panel. The electrician taught me how to disconnect by circuit, and I wrote it down in the closet. I placed an emergency number near the intercom in large print. Small changes take the house out of improvisation, and I no longer live improvised. I live in decision. The lawyer brought me copies of my husband's diaries, which are in the records. I read a short excerpt in which he described the idea of the maintenance fund. It was objective, with review dates and average amounts saved. He wrote, so Glenda wouldn't have to depend on favors. I closed the notebook and thanked him quietly in the kitchen. I didn't cry from falling apart. I cried from understanding. Good care is what keeps you standing. I stood. I've returned to sewing with 2 neighbors once a week. We do hems, simple adjustments, and zipper replacements, always with a receipt. I charge a fair price and mark deliveries on a board on the wall. No credit, no pay later. Only agreed upon, of course. Besides the little money, it brings my head back to my hand. A busy hand thinks better, and thinking better has become my new standard. I'm not going back to automatic. Darren brought the documents from the separation. He showed the termination of the old lease, the new contract, and the car lease in his name. He said he'd canceled additional cards and reorganized the accounts. He asked if he could spend Sunday painting the guest room. I said yes, with the time and paint he'd purchased and the receipt kept. He showed up early, painted, mopped the floor, and took out the trash. When he was finished, he gave me a copy of the receipt and asked to see our old album. I said yes on the couch, unhurriedly and without excuse. Lyra continued with the installments, some right on schedule. I marked each one and didn't think about it beyond that. If she was late, a fine. If she paid, a receipt. The lawyer took care of the rest, and I got on with life. Little by little, the topic of collection became just a weekly item. Neither good nor bad, just necessary. And necessary things we do, check and file. Then close the file and move on. I started planning a small kitchen repair. Drawers that stuck and a stained sink. I requested 3 quotes, compared deadlines, materials, and warranty. I chose the middle one, neither the cheapest nor the most expensive. I put down a 30% down payment and only paid the rest when the work was completed. I kept dated before and after photos with the receipt. The kitchen is functional again, and that changes my mood. I made soup and froze portions, something I hadn't done in a while. It's simple, but it's a tidy life. I replaced the sink, the drawer slides, and adjusted the countertop height. Now I can make coffee without bumping into anything and store pots without fighting with the wood. I asked the carpenter to make everything with large, easy-to-grasp handles. I photographed the completed work and attached it to the home maintenance folder. I sent the before and after photos to Darren just so he could see the house moving. He replied, "It looks great, Mom," and I marked the message as read. The finished kitchen gave me the courage to tackle the backyard. I gathered the tools, sanded the bench, varnished it, and wrote down the date. Routine care is the opposite of neglect, and I chose care. I called the street manager to discuss safety on the block. I proposed a small group just for warnings, no small talk. We set rules, alarm test days, and contact with the police station. I was responsible for the emergency contact sheet. I pasted a laminated copy on the gate of each house that agreed. Old doesn't mean distracted. Old knows how to coordinate. We arranged a pruning campaign to brighten the streetlights. The following week, the street looked different. Good light reduces fear. I opened my closet and sorted through what hadn't been part of me for years. 3 heavy coats, dresses that didn't represent me, shoes that hurt. I took everything to the garage sale, labeling them with size and condition. With the proceeds, the center bought diapers for the local nursing home. I went to deliver it but didn't go in. It wasn't the time or place for me. I helped unload, signed for the delivery, and returned home. On the way, I bought a new plant for the balcony. I placed it in the pot on the varnished bench and smiled to myself. Small changes improve the air. The lawyer informed me that the formal halfway point of the agreement was approaching. He suggested registering a partial settlement agreement for the installments paid. "It's good bureaucracy," he said. "It ensures no one goes back on what's already been done." I went to the notary's office, signed, stamped, and received the sealed copy. I kept it in my safe and scanned it to the cloud as I've been doing. I sent Darren a copy so he could learn the correct steps. He responded with thanks and asked if I needed anything. I replied that I just needed continuity. Continuity is the new word in my life. I decided to review my health insurance plan and cancel what was an expensive perk. I went to the agency with my briefcase and asked for an explanation item by item. I cut coverage I wasn't using and adjusted the deductible to my profile. The attendant tried to push premium service, but I said no. I signed the change and recorded the monthly savings on the spreadsheet. I used half to increase my care fund and half for leisure. Leisure was a real item, not a guilt trip. I bought a ticket to an exhibition downtown. I took the subway during the day without rushing. In therapy, I brought up a topic that had been nagging at me: guilt for having let it get to this point. The psychologist asked me to list 10 current decisions that protect me. I listed 15 without forcing myself. She said that guilt serves when it becomes a criterion for choice, not when it becomes a whip. I wrote in my notebook: useful guilt = learning, useless guilt = blocking. I repeat this when my mind tries to pull me back to the past. The past has documents, the present has decisions. I live in the present and archive the past. Archiving is respecting without reliving pain. I was invited to teach a quick financial organization workshop downtown. I prepared 4 pages, a list of documents, a calendar of accounts, a secure password, and who your lawyer is. It was simple, straightforward, with space for everyone to fill in their information. I began by explaining my Statement Sunday routine. I showed them the folder, the post-its, the password safe, and the checklist. I asked what seemed difficult and what seemed possible to start. They left with small tasks and realistic dates. 2 weeks later, 3 returned with the folders assembled. I noted, "It's not a miracle, it's a method." Darren came on Saturday and brought herb seedlings for the garden. Bed. We planted basil, rosemary, and chives in a row. He was silent for a moment, then said, "I'm sorry." I replied that I was listening and that time would tell. He asked if he could accompany me to inspect the roof. I agreed with a written schedule and estimate. We went up with the professional and took photos of what needed replacing. I came back down with the images and a plan. A plan is what prevents improvisation from happening again. Lyra sent an email asking about waiving the final fine. The lawyer responded precisely, "The fine is part of the agreement, not a punishment." He sent the excerpt, the date, the index, and the case law. Everything was in black and white and free of emotional issues. I didn't have to write a single line. This is the relief of having a procedure. I focused on my daily list and a simple lunch: beans, rice, eggs, and salad. Life fits on a decent plate. I went for an early walk again with a group of neighbors. A leisurely pace, square, 3 laps around the stretch. Short conversations, no gossip, just practical, positive things. One woman took a stretch she learned at the physical therapist. Another showed me a water app to remind me to drink. I shared my home safety checklist. We returned home with the sun rising and a brighter day ahead. I showered, had coffee, and sat down for my Sunday morning routine. When the basics are covered, the rest becomes easier. A distant cousin called me concerned and wanted to know the details of the process. I asked him to email me his questions so I could answer them when I could. He insisted on resolving the issue over the phone because family is family. I told him that family is whoever respects the way I choose to speak. I politely hung up and sent a written summary later. He didn't respond, and I chalked it up to peace being achieved. Not every call requires emotional feedback. Sometimes it just requires format. Format protects. I put a long-held dream into practice, taking a short carpentry course. The class had everything: curious young people, women like me, and retirees full of history. I learned how to measure properly, select screws, and understand wood. I returned home knowing how to repair a wobbly chair. I replaced the screws, leveled the base, and gave the old piece of furniture a new lease on life. I wrote down the steps in my notebook using simple drawings. Each thing I learn doubles my sense of capability, and perceived capability changes how we move around the house. I walk with confidence. Nearing the 4-month mark, the lawyer scheduled a review meeting. We brought the consolidated spreadsheet, the partial statement, the receipts, and the photos. The outstanding balance fit on the last line of a page. He suggested preparing the final settlement and waiver agreement now. "You'll sign it when the last installment is due," he said. "It's best to be ready." I left the office with the feeling of a goal set, not a constant battle. Ends the battle, the goal is accomplished. I'm in the stage of achieving goals, one step at a time, in my own time. The roof came first because rain waits for no argument. I went upstairs with the technician, and Darren stayed in the backyard, checking the photos I was taking. 3 pieces of wood were replaced, a new blanket, and the gutters were unclogged, all as per the estimate. I asked for a receipt with itemized details and a written 12-month warranty. When I came down, I inspected the work from the inside. No leaks, no new stains. I paid the remainder via Pix from my house account and attached the receipt to the folder. Darren put away the ladder and swept the hallway without me asking. He looked at me and said, "Good job, Mom." I replied, "Wow, each to their own." The house felt better after the roof was replaced. I switched back to the outdoor lighting and replaced 2 burned-out bulbs with LED sensors. I marked the next inspection of these fixtures on my calendar so I wouldn't forget. I also installed a timer on the water tank pump. A simple thing, but it prevents scares and high bills. I photographed the timer and affixed a label to the correct circuit breaker. The feeling that everything is up to date reduces the amount of stress I have on my mind. The more I take care of it, the less likely it is to cause trouble. I received an invitation from the community radio station to speak about seniors' rights. I accepted on the condition that it would be practical. Documents, routine, limits. I talked about my Statement Sunday and the password safe, without names, without soap operas. I explained what coercion is based on my own experience with objective examples. I spoke of trust as a plan of love, not as a weapon against a relative. Many people called asking for the checklist. I emailed a simple PDF. At the end, the announcer said it was powerful to listen without shouting. I smiled and thought, what's truly powerful is having procedures. Organized a binder called Life Plan with 4 sections: home, health, finances, and trusted contacts, each with an index and cover. I left 2 printed copies with friends who live nearby, agreeing to confidentiality. I wrote on the cover page, "If I ask, bring this binder to me." It's not paranoia, it's prepared autonomy. I let Darren know where my route is without giving him the key to the safe. Trust is a step, and we climb it step by step without skipping steps to please anyone. Lawyer called me about a bank dispute that had returned. An old purchase I'd already disallowed reappeared, approved by mistake. I took a deep breath, separated the statements, and redid the file with the date and printout. He filed it with my authorization and a response deadline. 3 days later, the final refund and apology from the manager arrived. I saved the email and marked "Resolved" on the spreadsheet. These small victories remind me that signed paper works without the fuss. No tires, paper solves. I invited 2 new neighbors for lunch on Sunday. A simple table, a clean tablecloth, and the seasoned beans I know how to make. We talked about neighborhood things, exchanging jobs, and a reliable phone number. I showed them the street inspection schedule and the police station contact information. One of them offered to inspect the garden as a favor. I declined the favor, accepting the service with a small, dated receipt. Good friendships don't mix with quick tricks, which turn into invisible debts. They understood and stayed until breakfast. In the afternoon, an old friend came over, the kind from before everything. We sat on the porch and she asked me point blank if I was alone. I replied that I was alone sometimes, but never lost again. I told her about the carpentry course, the bazaar, and the walks in the square. She told me about her grandson and the successful renovation. We laughed about good memories and didn't take anyone to task. When she left, the house fell silent in a good way. A silence that doesn't hurt, just rests. The lawyer updated. 60% of the settlement paid and no outstanding legal issues. He suggested drafting the final settlement agreement and waiver of any inheritance. When the last one comes in, we'll sign it that same day, he said, pen ready. I asked him to include a line about no contact outside of the agreed channels. He added it and sent me the draft for a leisurely perusal. I read it with a mug in hand, marked 2, commas, and returned it approved. The end is no longer a wish, it has become a probable date. This changes how the body sleeps. There was a night when the void tightened, for no clear reason. My mind flashed back to when I'd asked permission for everything. I got up, washed my face, opened my binder, and flipped through the Home tab. Rereading procedures calms me more than a pretty phrase. I made some tea, wrote 3 lines in my notebook, and went back to bed. Sleeping isn't ignoring, it's trusting the path I've set. I woke up early and followed the day's routine without negotiating with myself. Routine is my lifeline. At the community center, the workshop became a bi-weekly group. Each meeting has a different topic: fixed bills, secure passwords, simple contracts. I bring printed examples and leave room for everyday questions. No one leaves as an expert. Everyone leaves with a clear first step. One woman brought the entire folder and cried with relief. I hugged her, without speech, just firmly. Seeing others standing up lifts me up. Loneliness diminishes when we share our methods. Lyra's lawyer sent an email asking about an early settlement agreement, this time without a silence clause and with all costs covered by them. I requested a simulation, current value, fines, interest, and proof of origin. A closed spreadsheet arrived along with a deposit into an escrow account to be released upon signature. I read it slowly, checked it with my record, 24 and asked to decide. Decisions aren't made by haste, they're made through consistency. If the basis is sound, I'll move forward. If there's a hole, I'll stop. That's how it is for me now. While I was deciding, I reviewed my priorities for the next day. I straightened the laundry room shelf and changed the water purifier filter. I confirmed my monthly appointment and scheduled a fasting blood test. I responded to 3 emails from the street group and scheduled the next light check. I made a shopping list and calculated my expenses before leaving the house. The world may be noisy outside, but my desk has rules. A simple rule that protects me from overdoing it and forgetting. That's how I get to the end with my feet on the ground. I reviewed the proposal with my lawyer and an accountant he recommended. I requested proof of the source of the funds, the release schedule, and all their costs. The spreadsheets matched my control, with no juggling or hidden fine print. I demanded a written waiver of any future inheritance linked to me. I also required a no-contact clause outside of the agreed channels, with a clear penalty. We slept one night with the documents sealed to decide with a clear head. I woke up, reread them with coffee, and jotted down 3 questions, all answered by email. We signed the early settlement agreement, conditioned on a full court deposit, procedure before feeling, as I've learned to do. On the appointed day, we went to the courthouse to sign the final agreement, conditioned on a deposit. The manager confirmed via speakerphone. The amount was in the court account, identified by case. The judge checked, approved, and ordered the release as per the procedure. My lawyer read the waiver and no contact clauses allowed. I signed with a steady hand, took a deep breath, and put my copy in the file. There were no tears, there was a stamp and a protocol, which is the key to peace of mind. I left with a normal stride, looking straight ahead at the ground, without stumbling. In the car, I sent a short message to Darren. "We're closing today, as agreed." He replied, "Thank you for letting me follow through the right way." I used the money I received to clear up small household issues that had been left for later. I replaced the old electrical panel with one with labeled circuit breakers, according to current standards. I adjusted the heater, inspected the gas piping, and updated the fire extinguisher. I reinforced the back door lock with an extra latch and an alignment test. I created a prevention envelope in my monthly budget with a fixed amount. It's not spending aimlessly. It's scheduling what has always been pushed aside. I recorded photos, notes, and dates in the maintenance tab. I closed the folder and labeled it House Stabilized Biannual Inspection. Stabilization is as important as success. I sat down with my lawyer to update my own documents for the future. A simple will, a preventive power of attorney, and a clear letter of intent. I listed who can make decisions with me if I ask, and within what limits. I included Darren and my friend from the bazaar as trusted contacts jointly. Nothing too much for one person alone because I've already learned how that strains relationships. I made it clear that my house will not be sold without my express written consent. I recorded my health and routine preferences to avoid any confusion. I signed, notarized, and distributed the correct copies. Planning is about loving those who stay and respecting who I am. To mark the closing, I hosted a small lunch, no speeches. Beans, rice, chicken in a pan, and a generous salad on a simple, clean table. I invited 2 friends and the center coordinator, who has also become a friend. I explained in 3 sentences what was resolved and what will change from now on. They toasted me with juice and gave me a vase of jasmine for the porch. I thanked them and explained my next step, to keep the momentum going without becoming a flag. We don't need to experience the end as a spectacle. We need to live everyday life as a choice. I chose to stay on track. I spent an entire afternoon reorganizing the file after the settlement. I removed the conflict tabs and left only final agreement and receipts. I created a new tab called Current Life, Bills, Appointments, and Quarterly Goals. I updated the index and left a post-it note for review every 6 months. This small gesture took the story out of the fire drawer and put it in the file drawer. Files don't disappear, but they don't rule me either. I closed the file, put it in the safe, and went to water the plants. It was an ordinary Tuesday, just the way I like it. Ordinary has power. Darren invited me to see his new apartment. I went in the afternoon with an appointment and without bringing a gift from home, just flowers for him. I saw a clean sink, a contract on the notice board, and his folder with the month's bills. We talked about work, therapy, and the handrail he'd installed in the hallway. He asked if I wanted to have dinner there, something simple, pasta and sauce ready. I accepted for the gesture, not the food, and ate with gratitude. Before leaving, I hugged him quickly and said, "Thanks for acting like a grown-up." He smiled awkwardly and said, "I'm learning, Mom." Learning is what I expect from him now. At the community center, we formalized the group as a regular program. I put together a basic kit, a folder, a checklist, a receipt template, and a calendar. Each woman leaves with a feasible task for the following week. No giant goals. Those who return with the task completed teach the next, multiplying the method. I talk little and show a lot, because that's how it worked for me. Sometimes there's tears, sometimes there's laughter, always there's relief. The coordinator says the room has gained a new energy of constancy. Consistency is a silent revolution. I trust her. One day, Lyra called. I didn't answer. An email arrived asking for a conversation to ease our hearts. I forwarded it to my lawyer and responded with 2 lines. For matters, please email Dr. X. No open door to where I'd already locked and received a receipt. I didn't return the insult. I didn't apologize. I didn't offer any stage space. Her time in my life now is only the time in the archive. The archive says, closed. I say, life goes on with rules. Rules are my self-care. I started cycling again early. When the square was water bottle quiet, and a short route marked on the clock. 2 laps, stopped on the bench and breathing deeply. My head is grateful when my body moves in the right way. Back, a warm shower and filtered coffee, my husband's mug in hand. I put old songs on the speaker and let them play quietly around the living room. I remembered him without pain, with that hard, simple gratitude. He protected me with paper. I protect myself with habit. We are at peace. I started a new notebook, goal just for sure. 1 per week. Replace the refrigerator door seal, check light bulbs, donate duplicate books, things that fit on my arm, in my pocket, and in my planner. When I accomplish them, I mark a green square and write the date. At the end of the month, I look at the page and see a path, not a race. This prevents me from falling into the temptation of all or nothing. I don't need to conquer the world. I need to keep my head and my house on straight. That's how I intend to continue. Skipping steps without step by step, as I've been doing. I received the final discharge agreement by email with the missing stamp. I printed it, signed the document, and kept it with the other copies. The lawyer closed the process in the system and sent me the discharge certificate. I responded with a, "Thank you for treating me like an adult all the time." He said I treated myself that way, and it made everything easier. I closed my laptop and went to sweep the porch, as usual. This is real life. Sweep the porch after the stamp and everything is fine. I'm fine, truly. I decided to give myself a closing gift, a simple day trip. I took the early bus to the neighboring town, the museum, and coffee and cake in the square. I didn't buy anything big, just looked slowly and walked slowly. I sat on a bench, read a chapter, and sent a photo of the bloom to my neighbors. On the way back, I bought new seeds for the flower bed and a pretty dish towel. I arrived feeling tired and well, with a body that had walked on its own 2 feet. I planted the seeds in the soil, washed the mug, and sat in my reading corner. The house welcomed me as it always should have. Mine, in the simplest sense of the word. I discarded the old folders and created the semester 1-inch section of my new binder. Tabs: home, health, finances, and current life, each with a calendar attached. I listed due dates, reviews, and emergency contacts with updated phone numbers. I made a PDF copy and saved it to a flash drive and the cloud with the file name and date. I set a monthly alarm to check if anything changed and needed fixing. No more relying on memory when paper can remember for me. I wrote down next steps: well pump, overhaul, and dental checkup. I closed the binder and left it on the office shelf. Label facing front. Visible organization avoids excuses. I welcomed Darren on a Thursday, a simple dinner at a prearranged time. He rang the intercom, I answered, and we followed the routine. Cooking, dishes, a short conversation. We talked about bills, the new handrail in his building, and work. I showed him the sticker from the semi-annual house inspection. He praised the system. I didn't give him a key and he didn't ask for one because a prearranged rule fosters respect. After breakfast, he washed and dried the dishes as we'd agreed. We left on time and we sent a message when we got home. Everything in writing. The relationship works best when each person holds their own. That way, we don't lose each other. I stopped by the lawyer's office and retrieved the originals that were in custody. A flash drive, certified copies of the final agreement, and the notarized copies. We checked them one by one, stapled them together, and dated them. I left one copy in a safe deposit box and another with my trusted friend as agreed. My husband always wrote, "A saved copy is a pain avoided." Today, I understand the value of not relying on just one drawer. I thanked the lawyer and scheduled an annual review of the documents. I left without any pending issues, few pending issues, and a clear head. At the community center, I organized a document drive, a printed list, ID, CPF, certificates, proof of address, and trusted contacts. Each table had a volunteer to help check dates and request duplicates. Those who didn't have an email address left with one immediately, their password written down on safe deposit box paper. We explained why copies should be kept in 2 different places. No grand theory, just practical practice with a beginning and an end. At the end, we agreed to return in 30 days to see who completed the process. Those who complete the process teach the next person. That's how it multiplies. I left feeling tired and well. At home, I created a simple table of services I provide and their prices: hem stitching, zippers, waist adjustments, and minor chair repairs, clear pricing, written deadlines, and dated receipts without exception. I posted the table and left an order pad next to it. Anyone who brings an item leaves with the delivery date already written down. No, I'll let you know, because I'll let you know disappears. I bought a stamp with my name and phone number to standardize. Small business, big impact on my routine. What gets measured gets respected. I bought a used printer with a scanner and installed it in my office. I tested scanning invoices, receipts, all in PDF format. I created folders by month and topic, with short, clear names and no extraneous spaces. I printed a sheet with the file name rule and stuck it on the wall. Toner lasts longer if it prints on both sides, so I activated it in the settings. Statement Sunday now ends with scanning everything on paper. 15 more minutes, 0 wasted paper. When I need it, I email it without getting up from my chair. Convenience that saves stress. I went to the ophthalmologist, got my lenses replaced, and got a pair of lightweight reading glasses. I took the opportunity to schedule a dental cleaning, getting a quote beforehand. I wrote down the date, professional, and recommended follow-up appointment in my file. I set a reminder on my phone 15 days before the next exam. Health without scares is a routine, not an event. I stopped by the pharmacy and reorganized my medicine box by appointment. Large labels, pills in the correct blister, nothing loose. Doing the basics well gives me autonomy. Autonomy is my guiding principle. Now, an email arrived from Lyra attempting to contact me personally and outside of the proceedings. I immediately forwarded it to my lawyer and responded with the standard phrase, "Please discuss matters with Dr. X on this email." No side conversations, no audio, no return to what was already concluded. I received the lawyer's acknowledgement with the message protocol. No response after that, as it should be. A closed matter doesn't become a topic again. My time is for what's happening. So, rest stays in the archive. I grabbed my husband's old maintenance schedule again. I rewrote it on my calendar. Water filter, gutter, gate painting, gas checkup. I adjusted dates to suit my budget and pace, taking my time and avoiding hassles. Each task has a supplier, price, and warranty written down. When finished, a before and after photo and proof of completion are attached. It's not a decoration, it's a practical reminder of what was done. With this method, the house doesn't become a surprise. I deal with what's there, not the scare. Scares are expensive. I received an invitation from the City Hall to speak during Senior Citizens Month. I thanked them and said I'd prefer to hand out a simple printed guide. I prepared a single page, documents, password, routine, and contacts, direct language, check boxes, and space for notes. I printed 100 copies at the local print shop and left them on the counter downtown. Anyone interested can pick them up, read them, and take them home. I don't need a stage, I need an effect. And the effect is measured in the folder you put together. That's what matters to me. At home, I wrote my letter of principles and framed it in the hallway. Short items. My money, my decision. Respect is mandatory. Written channel. Routine over improvisation. Also, love with limits. Help with receipts. Saved copy. Open door to affection. I dated it and signed my name, reminding everyone that I chose it. Anyone who comes in reads it without me having to explain it every time. This avoids awkward conversations and saves me energy. A principle in sight becomes a habit. Habit keeps the house standing. I stick to it. On Saturday, I set up the porch for a street lunch. A simple table, a clean tablecloth, juice, rice, beans, and salad. Each person brought a dish, and we jotted down recipes in a neighborhood notebook. I spoke little, listened a lot, and laughed appropriately. In the end, I collected the dishes, washed them calmly, and put everything back in its place. I looked at the tidy house and the sun beating down on the varnished bench. I didn't think about the process nor the past, only the present. An organized present is the best response to what has been, and that's where I stay. That night, I closed my month in my binder. My bills were balanced, my health was up to date, my maintenance was completed, and I had simple goals marked. I wrote 2 lines in my notebook. I owe nothing, I fear nothing. I planned, I executed. I sent a photo of the memory wall to Darren, just to share the moment. He replied with a, "Proud of you, Mom," and good night sleep. I turned out the lights on time, locked the house, and lay down on my side of the bed. No noise in my head, no hidden list, no fear of opening the door tomorrow. Tomorrow is a routine, and routine sustains me. Sleeping well is part of victory. We closed the month with another meeting at the community center. The printed guides ran out in 20 minutes and asked for reprints. 3 women assembled complete folders, 2 blocked additional cards, 1 regularized her pension. I coordinated the line, checked documents, and noted pending tasks with deadlines. I left an extra kit with the coordinator and a step-by-step guide posted on the wall. I returned home by bus, feeling well-rested and free from noise. In the binder, I marked "Community Delivered" with the date and number of guides. I understand that kind of result. Completed, paper saved, life moving forward. That's what sustains me today. We concluded the first cycle of therapy with Darren with a written agreement. Visits were scheduled, no keys were given, and financial matters were handled only by email. with a copy of the lawyer. Health emergency services were available at any time, with trusted contact information already listed. He read it, agreed, and signed with me, not as a contract, but as an adult commitment. We spoke little about the past and a lot about how it's going to be. I said that trust is a deposit. He replied that he's willing to deposit it. We hugged briefly, just right, each of us on our own. I left feeling light, with no expectations of perfection, only consistency. Consistency is our goal now. I transformed the guest room into my sewing and tool studio. I removed the bed, installed a large table, a good lamp, and labeled shelves. One wall was for thread, another for zippers, and another for screws and wrenches. I posted a delivery calendar and price list, all visible. I took before and after photos and attached them to the current life tab. On the door, a simple sign reads, Studio, Glenda. Guests are allowed only with a scheduled date and a clear reason. Otherwise, it's a workspace. A room that serves the present reduces the possibility of invasion. My home now serves my hands. I updated my cell phone's ICE, information security information, with contacts and allergies and registered it on the intercom. I purchased basic homeowner's insurance and saved the policy in a file and as a PDF. I left a sealed envelope with emergency instructions with my trusted friend. No loose keys, use only with my written authorization. I scheduled a simple simulation to turn off the gas and power with step-by-step instructions attached. I reinforced the list of reliable providers with 3 options for each service. Everything included phone number, time, and average price, so I didn't have to improvise. I only improvise at parties, otherwise, I just follow the procedure. This keeps me safe. I requested a technical appraisal of the house just for the record. A printed report with photos, square footage, and general condition filed in the property folder. On the first page, I wrote in pen, "Not for sale." It's not a threat. It's a clarification for myself and anyone who asks. I sent a copy to Darren for information without a request for comment. He replied, "Received, as it should be. Continue to live here by choice and by right, with everything up to date. No suspense, no soap operas, just the daily routine I've created. That's how I like it." I closed the week's notebook with 3 simple lines. I don't owe, I don't fear. I planned, I executed, the house and I are on track. I washed the coffee mug, turned off the lights, checked the gate, and went to bed. If anyone tries to push me again, there's a procedure, documents, and a lawyer. If anyone wants to join in, there's a chair on the porch and a clean conversation. Darren walks at his own pace. I walk at mine without losing my bearings. Lyra stayed where she belongs, in the file with a closed stamp. The rest is good routine, and good routine is victory.